Welcome to Business Talk Sister Gog. I'm Becca, and today's podcast episode is Broke is a Pattern. Here's how to break it. And with me today, I have an entrepreneur. Christopher's Fi.Ed is the business with Christopher Henagin. Thank you so much for being with me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I appreciate the invite.
Okay, so I'm really excited about this. Christopher's Fi.Ed, tell me, what do you do?
So I'm a prior financial advisor, and I realized that as a financial advisor, if I just teach people how to manage their own money, it was going to be pretty tough in that profession for me to make a living. So after I left that profession, I decided to start a side hustle where I give small groups presentations on personal finance to teach them how to do it themselves. I am also in the process of writing a book too, but I've been procrastinating.
Okay, so coming soon, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, yeah, so tell me a little bit about why did you decide to do this? Like what's the story behind like the money side of things and what made you realize, yes, this is why I wanted to start doing this?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, I was raised by a single mother and her two sisters, and we didn't have a lot of money. So I learned the first myth about money, which is hard work will get you there. Hard work alone will not get you there. My mom works harder than most other people that I know, and she never complains about it. She's woken up at 5:30 in the morning and worked as a certified nurse's assistant my entire life. So she's a hard worker. There's no question about that. That's not the issue. There needs to be a plan involved. So, long story short, I did what I thought I was supposed to do when I got older. I went to college. I got the degree as a congratulation gift. I got my $89,000 in student loan debt. And on May 21st, 2020, I paid that off. I made a post on my social media about it, and friends and family started reaching out to me, asking how I did it, asking me to help them do it. And after that, it just made sense for me to start helping people doing this.
Mm. That's such an exciting feeling, isn't it, when you pay off your student loans? Like,
Oh, you man, it's my freedom date, is what I call that.
yeah.
Excitement is an understatement. Liberation is more appropriate.
Yeah. So what do you think some of the biggest myths are for money that keep people stuck in that cycle of like feeling like they're in poverty or are actually in poverty?
Well, the first one is that hard work myth, right? Like the hustle culture thing it's real. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we need to work hard and we need to have a plan, but hard work alone is not going to do it. Everybody knows somebody that's working really, really hard. Single parents, multiple kids, running everywhere, doing everything, waking up early, going to bed late. They're doing hard work, but they're not getting there. You know, they're not building wealth. They're not understanding how the hard work is actually benefiting them.
Hmm.
And I think everybody believes that, that if you work hard enough, if I just work a little bit harder, that, oh man, it'll work. But it's got to be more than just hard work that goes into this.
So what do you think then the difference is between how people are looking at this and making that plan? What does that look like?
Having a plan versus not having a plan is just like a business startup getting rolling. Businesses with plans, with execution, with processes, all of these things are much more likely to be successful than businesses that are just like, oh, I leveraged my house, I did this, I don't have time for a business plan, I'm already in motion. I'm trying to build the plan while I'm flying it. I mean, sometimes that works, but I would say more often than not, at some point we got to slow down and start making processes because professionals have processes.
Okay. So what does that look like on a micro level of like a simple process that you've seen be effective for someone?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're talking finance, right? So I'm going to relate everything in personal finance to what I know about business finance because I think that's where the big aha happens for a lot of people. So when we learn about like our numbers that are necessary in our financial situation, it really comes down to four numbers that matter: our income and our expenses in the near term. So that's going to be in our budget. And then our assets and our liabilities in the long term. That's going to be in our net worth analysis. How is it affecting our wealth? So with those four numbers, income and expenses, assets and liabilities, we can really start to assess how is the money that is coming in the short term affecting how the money is growing on our behalf in the long term. And if you think about this from business perspective, a budget is like a business's profit or loss statement. So if you've never heard of business terms before, profit and loss is how businesses keep track of the money coming in and the money going out of their business every month. And they know whether that monthly or that month of operations was profitable or not. And then in the long term, they're keeping track of all the business's assets and liabilities so that they know whether their business is becoming more or less valuable. And you can do the same exact thing for your personal finances.
Okay. And so, do you think that there's any mindset shift that has to change for someone to change a financial trajectory?
Yeah, the first one is doing the obvious thing, which is tracking the information. So I can't tell you how many people are like, I don't make a budget because I know what I spend every month. And then I ask them, what's the number? Right. And then they'll give me some total, and it's always like 25 or $2,600. And then I have them write it out. And before they're even done with like their housing expenses, their vehicle expenses, and their debts, they're past it. They forget about food and subscriptions and fun and addictions and entertainment and, you know, all the other stuff. So
Mm.
when they actually start to write it out, it never fails. Nobody has ever written a list of their expenses in front of me without them being like, oh yeah, multiple times.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so let's dig into that, like how you do what you do. So, what kind of habits do you see people have repeatedly that make them stuck, and how do you help them break those?
They spend every single dollar. So as soon as they get paid, they pay what they believe they have to pay right now, and then they spend everything else.
So they never leave anything left.
Nothing. And I
Okay.
got three rules that I require my sons to follow. Now, whether or not they do it, I guess is up to them. They have freedom, but if their finances are a mess, it's always going to be their fault, in my opinion, because you've been given all of the tools. But my three rules are: spend less than you make, save and invest, and only borrow money to make more money.
Okay.
You follow those three steps, and basically every personal finance guru or anybody else that's talking to you about your finances, if you follow those three rules, you should be okay.
So when someone's looking at realistically, like are there like structural limits or anything that make it unattainable for anybody? Or have you just seen that anyone can do those things and become successful?
I don't want to generalize and say anyone, right? Because
No, that's fair.
right, because I took the IDI assessment where you start to realize like, okay, I have full cognitive ability, I have all of my health, all of my I
Right.
have capabilities. I don't have limitations that are physical or mental or any of those things. So I don't want to say everybody, but I would say for a typical person, they can make huge strides to improve their financial situation by doing some very, very obvious things. The first one is find ways to increase our income, whether that's taking on additional work or doing more work to start off with. But eventually, the long term play has to be building skills that are more valuable, that pay us more for less time. So if we think about that from a perspective, it's like, okay, I told you earlier, my mother is a CNA. Could she make more money while she was working at the hospital doing a different role? And the answer is, of course, right? She could get an advanced degree as a licensed practitioner nurse first. She could be, or yeah, licensed practitioner nurse. I think LPN is the next one, and then RN, right, would be the next one. And then you could be a nurse practitioner or a doctor, and you could keep advancing. Um, if you're working in construction, maybe you start out as a general laborer, but then you start getting an advanced skill like plumbing or electrical or HVAC or something that's going to pay you six figures a year. Maybe you find a niche in the community, a role at like a paper mill or another manufacturing place that pays very, very well. But the first thing is we got to make sure that we have enough money coming in so that we can spend less than we're making and still survive.
Mm-hmm. So I know that like a lot of other people that are doing financial coaching or whatever, they kind of talk about building like an emergency fund to make sure you have what you need in case of a rainy day. Is that something that you do, or do you have a different approach to that?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So first step has to be the emergency fund. I believe that wholeheartedly. And the reason is because, again, if we were to apply this to a business scenario, if I were starting up a brand new business and I were projecting how much revenue they could make and how much their monthly expenses would be, how likely am I to get that perfect? Not miss a single dollar.
It's pretty
It's like a
unlikely.
0% chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so if I know for a fact, even with years of experience in business and finance, that there's no way that I could project with 100% accuracy how much revenue was going to come in and how much expenses were going to go out, there has to be a little bit of leeway. And that leeway is that emergency savings account. If I am off by a few $100s, if I forgot that my internet subscription was going from the $79 introductory rate to $140 one month, that 50 or $60 can't make or break me. I don't want to put it on a credit card and have If I was
Mm-hmm.
having trouble struggling, and then all of a sudden I have a few $100s in expenses in a month, the next month's not going to be better because now I have that few $100s in expenses plus interest plus all the other expenses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Plus, if I do not have an emergency fund, I'm probably already in the habit of getting my money, paying what I can, spending the rest, which means I don't
Mm-hmm.
have any extra to begin with. So the situation is not getting better. It's obviously snowballing out of control.
Yeah. So tell me what you think about hustle culture. Do you think it's helping people positively or negatively?
I think it's helping people who needed it, who have a plan. I think it's hurting people who don't have a plan and are just viewing it as a way to make a bag and then buy some stuff. I mean, long-term thinking is necessary when we're thinking about financials. At some point, God willing, we're going to be old. And our older self is counting on our younger self to make some good decisions on their behalf while we still got the body and the mind and the energy to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing I always kind of talk to my kids about is that aspect of like you have the choice to work using your body or work using your brain. And one of those is going to give out before the other one. So make sure that you are training both of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And honestly, right? So if we're working our body super hard, that doesn't mean we can't make a few smart tweaks along the way and, invest in our retirement account, make sure that we understand our employer benefits, make sure that we start to understand a few different investment accounts, which we can talk about later, that make total sense for most people. And just start putting a little bit away because a little bit goes a long way if it's consistently done.
Yeah, so tell me, what are some of the biggest wins that you've seen from people that you've worked with?
Oh man, introducing people to the debt snowball. So that's a big one. So we talked about, is an emergency fund vital? Yes. You need an emergency fund, and I like the $1,000 mark is the first mark. The milestones that I teach in my class are 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and a million. And the reality is that first 1,000 can be an absolute life changer for people. For people who have never had $1,000 in a savings account that they set aside for a rainy day, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first time that they see a comma in an account that they know is going to sit there, that they know is going to stay there, that is just like protecting them just a little bit from the nonsense, that changes a lot of people's perspective. Like they feel wealthy at that point.
Mm.
So, I mean, yeah, just the $1,000 mark. But then the next one is when you teach somebody about the debt snowball. You teach them that making a list of every single debt that you have, listing the balance, listing the interest rate, and then multiplying the balance by the interest rate to see how much interest you're losing holding that debt every year. You
Mm-hmm.
start to think about, okay, so now I'm losing six, seven, $8,000 a year in interest payments. That's hundreds of dollars a month that I could be using to grow my wealth rather than deplete it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the two big ones for me are that first comma in an emergency savings account, and that can come quick, right? Because we get windfalls at work. Maybe we'll get a bonus, we get a tax return that's got a few $1,000s, and maybe we put one of it away, right? That's a big one. We get money as a gift from an inheritance, or we sell something that we've had that we didn't need. Any of those things, anything to get that first comma in a savings account. And then the next one, the epiphany of like writing all of the information down and having the data in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So no engineer would design something and say, oh, it's all in my mind. I don't need to worry about making a blueprint, figure it out. Right. Like that. There's so many professional applications that would never just leave it to their mind. Pilots never take off from the runway without checking a checklist. No matter how many flights they've taken, how many hours they've flown, checklist every time. So having the data in front of you, usually at that point, it's pretty simple to guide people on what steps need to be taken. But yeah, putting the information in front of you, literally all of the information in front of you all the time.
So do you think that the people you surround yourself with contribute to your mindset and your success?
I do. I do. I'm a firm believer in positivity, right? If I'm around people who are constantly negative, it's pretty difficult to believe that I am going to be a positive person. Now, that being said, I think that we all need to take some accountability for our own situation. I mean, anything that has happened to anybody up to a certain point, they couldn't control. But after a certain point, right, we need to take some accountability for what's going on in our situation today, right now, and what we have control over. Because I used to work out all the time with buddies, right, when I was in college and before college, even. And after a while, you notice like your gym partner would show up late, or they take the day off because their body was a little sore, or they need to take off for something, right? And then after a while, you notice that you'd start skipping. So at some point, you got to be like, I'm going to work out at this date, at this time, regardless of who's there with me or not, right? So if we're taking accountability for our own fitness or our finance or whatever else it is, there has to be some personal accountability. But to your question, yes, I absolutely believe that you should hang out with folks that are like-minded, or growth-minded is more important, I guess. Growth-minded. Because people that believe things won't change no matter what, they're probably right for them. But if the growth mindset is there has to be something I can do right now, no matter how small, to make a small improvement so that I can do something else tomorrow to make another small improvement and let that snowball.
Mm. I love how you went to the personal accountability first, though, because I think that I was like, ooh, point taken.
I mean, right? We're parents, right? We were both talking about our kids earlier. Both all of our kids are teenagers, so it's like you can watch this shift from like the 11 to 14 year olds where a I'm sorry is still a valid solution in their life for years. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I broke this thing, I did this thing, whatever. But at some point around 15, 16, right before they're about to start driving a car or have
Yep.
real responsibilities that can be taken away from them that we don't have control over, right? You can't be
Hmm.
speeding on the road. Mom and dad ain't got nothing to do with that.
Hmm.
You can't be crashing into stuff or being inattentive or playing on your phone or doing these things while you're driving, or you can't keep driving. And that's not up to us. The police, the law, the judges, they'll take your stuff away. And like you can just
Hmm.
watch the shift where it's like, okay, and I'm sorry, and some nonsense that I'm dealing with as an 11, 12, 13-year old starts to shift to like, oh, I'm going to be driving a car. I might go to college. I'm going to be done with the school thing pretty quick. Oh, I got to figure out how I'm going to make some money. Like, what am I going to do with my life? And you
Yep.
can just watch the personal accountability transition.
Hmm. Yeah. So what are some common excuses people give you for the choices that they're making today that keep them stuck?
The typical excuse. So we're going to talk about this later, but some people believe that they need to manifest everything. So if I look at what is the reality of my situation and not what I want my situation to be, that it's only going to make my situation worse because I'm looking at reality rather than the dream.
Hmm.
Um, that's one excuse. Another excuse is, there just ain't no jobs out here, right? Which is not true. Even during the Great Depression, the unemployment rate was 25%, which means three-fourths of people had jobs. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there aren't economic or outside factors going on, but the reality is we have more control over our situation than the outside external world ever will. Politics. We're not going to get into that on this podcast, but I've had people tell me that a certain president was in office, so I sold my property before he got elected, or I pulled my money out of the stock market because this guy was getting elected, or whatever it was. When I was a financial advisor, we were always like brainwashed. Presidents don't control profits. So
Mm.
yeah, I've heard excuses. My spouse. Oh well, I'm a saver. My spouse is a spender. Well, you need to have a come to Jesus meeting with that person. Here's what it is. Put the data in front of them. Let them make their own
Mhm.
analysis. Don't, maybe it needs to be like I compile all of the data and I'm gonna present it to you like this is a board meeting.
Mm.
Like you need to know the numbers.
Yeah.
I did.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So with that, like, what resources would you recommend to anyone looking to learn more about this topic?
The first resource is just a pen and paper. So you need to write down income, all of the income that is typically coming into your household every month. And I think about into the household. So I don't think about the total number that's coming from my check. I think about the number that comes after all the retirement contributions, the taxes, all that stuff. What is coming into my household? Then I need to track how much is going out of my household for all of my expenses. And then I need to start taking inventory of all of the assets that I have, anything that is of value. And I start with anything that's of value of over $1,000. So I should have every account listed, everything that has value over $1,000 in it. And then I take inventory of all of my liabilities. And those are all the debts that I owe anybody for anything. And with that, income, expense, asset, and liability, when those things are all listed out, now I can actually use the internet, right? Teach me how to balance a budget. Teach me how to analyze my net worth. I could use AI. Looking at this income and these expenses, how can I grow my net worth? How can I understand my net worth? Um, Watch a YouTube video, listen to a podcast, look up audio books. You can use an app called Libby,
Mm.
Libby, and you can download the Libby app and you can download and rent audiobooks from the library, any public library, if you got a public library card. And you can listen to those books on finance, business, personal development for free. Now, the catch is you can only borrow them for 21 days, which I found to be super, super helpful because towards the end of that 21 days, now I'm serious about making sure I listen every day, right?
To get it done. Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
but yeah, pen and paper and that Libby app with a public library card can be a game changer. And then just take personal accountability for understanding finance. We live in a capitalist society. So if you don't understand capital or how to manage it or how to utilize it, you're going to struggle. That's just the reality. We can't escape that reality. So you need to understand capital to some level or you're going to struggle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so are you ready to transition to the GOG portion?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do this.
Okay, well, before we do, how can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Christopher Henagin is my name. Last name is Henagin. Yeah, if they reach out to
Awesome.
me on LinkedIn, they'll have all my contact information there.
Right on. Okay, so now you're gonna tell me a little bit about, you said you were giving a presentation and you had somebody that didn't want to participate with you. How did that go?
So I've given a couple of presentations where people would bring up the manifesting thing, which is fantastic. I am a power of positive thinking person, 100%. But we got to the portion where we were talking about a budget, and I said, okay, we're going to start with listing all of our expenses. And she's like, what? I'm not listing my expenses. If I list my expenses, I'm just manifesting more of that into my life. Um, at the time, I tried to be patient, but I couldn't help myself. So I went off on a tangent. I'm like, you know how an ostrich protects itself? Buries its head in the sand. It's like the lion's still circling the ostrich, but its head's in the sand, so it somehow feels safe. And I couldn't help it. I apologize to that lady for coming at her like that afterwards, but I was like, we got to take some inventory of what's going on here. Otherwise, we're gonna have a hell of a time trying to get you to your manifested destiny if this is where we're starting.
Live in denial and never face the truth, right?
Yeah, pretend you don't have bills and then you won't have bills. It's like playing hide and seek with a toddler, right? They cover their eyes and you can't see them.
hmm hmm Yeah, it only works for toddlers, right?
Yeah, I had another one where a lady was adamant about credit. Now, granted, she used to be a credit analyst, so she was totally adamant that if you don't have good credit, you can't ever build wealth. But I'm like, if I have an emergency account and I have a personal savings account and I have a 401k and I have a Roth IRA, and I have a general brokerage account. I mean, the checking account might run my credit to make sure that I have not done anything nefarious at a bank, but I don't need an 800 credit score to get a checking account. It's a pretty low barrier to entry to get a checking account. And if you don't, you can get a savings account, hold some cash, and the bank will open it for you. But she was like adamant. It was like credit or die, credit or die. And I went through a lot of rigmarole with her where we were talking about, she was like, well, if you look at Credit Karma, they're just making an estimate of your credit. And I'm like, personally, I don't care about credit. So, but if you want to know a credit hack, you could go on to TransUnion, Experian, Equifax, and freeze your credit so nobody can run it unless you unfreeze it. That's about as far as I care about credit. Because the reality is, if you're building your net worth and you have capital when you go to a bank to ask for anything, your credit is less relevant than your capacity and the capital that you bring to the deal, and then how good the deal is, right?
hmm Well, especially if it's like you're taking on debt to like make money because there is an opportunity, right?
Yeah. But
Like that's
unfortunately, most people don't, right? What do we use credit for?
hmm lots of things that we should not, or or sometimes like people are in that place where they're like, "Oh, my car died and I need a new one right now." Like, but that is definitely a liability.
Yeah. And your car point is a fantastic example of why that first step is what? What's the
Emergency fund, yeah.
Yeah, the emergency
Mm.
savings, because we got to have a little separation between us and an emergency, because it's gonna happen, right? Car battery is gonna die in northern Minnesota when it gets 40 below.
hmm
Everybody's had that experience if they're in a cold weather state. A tire is going to blow out on the side of the road if we're not getting them rotated or we're not doing our routine maintenance. A kid's going to break an arm and we're going to have to pay a deductible for a medical plan. A subscription's going to run out and our bill's going to jump and we're not going to remember that. Something's going to happen where we're going to be a little off.
Yep. No, yeah. And you know what? I do lots of budgets and lots of accounting and whatever else. And it's always good to, like, these are always good reminder conversations for me of like, oh, yeah, I need to go back and double check to make sure we're on the right track or whatever. So it's a good reminder, regardless of if you've ever done it before or not. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Well, thank you for being with me today. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, I hope it was helpful. I hope you got what you were hoping to get out of me, and I hope your audience learned something.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed this podcast, you should give it a review on wherever you are listening. And I will talk to you next time.